Well, welcome back to the Unlearning Circle. And today we're going to be diving in with alpha male grifters. Carl, what do you think about alpha male grifters?
Yeah, so this is not an individual person this time. It's a group of people called the Modern Day Knights who have, I'm assuming they're in the same camp as Stronger Men Conference, the Stronger Man Conference, and so on. I don't know. I think of it as I don't know if you guys remember John Eldridge.
Mm-hmm.
So John Eldridge, Wild at Heart, was that the name of the book? Where he said, every man needs a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And his saying used to be, every man needs a bigger orbit than just a woman. And so it's just kind of a subtle way to promote this toxic masculinity, but the Modern Day Knights is a recent thing, where they have these $18,000 boot camps. And as you could tell in the video, it's military style, humiliate people, and so on. So that was my question. What's an alpha male? And to be an alpha male is just real aggressive. I guess you relate it back to wolves or something like that. We're not wolves, but they want to say this is the guy that's aggressive, that's going to protect you. My problem with that is we really don't live in that kind of world anymore. I don't live out in the wild with wild animals, and we watch the thing on I can't remember what channel it's on, but we watch the Alaska Bush People series, where they've got to be physically strong, and because they're dealing with a bear might attack in the middle of the night, they're just sawing down big logs and have to drag them somewhere and all those kind of things. And so maybe you need that root brain reaction, that ability to fight off a bear or whatever. But according to the surveys, women said they'd rather face a bear in the wilderness than a man. So that tells me what we don't need is more aggressive men. I think we're already past where we should be in that area. What about you guys? How do you see that?
Well, I'll make sure JD corrected me last time. So I actually drank some of the Flavor Aid from Eldridge's Wild at Heart back in the day.
Oh,
I
me too.
went to one of his retreats
Mm.
where he led it, and you've got a bunch of men, and it's lots of chest bumping bro stuff. And I think a lot of it, more of my question is how did this become so into Christianity as well too? This alpha male stuff. I part of me feels like I feel like the 80s and 90s, the church felt like the Christian man was like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. And then I feel like to course correct, it went all the way to roid rage for the gospel type of stuff. And I mean, it's been going around. Does anyone remember, what was it? Team Challenge? Those guys, they were like these, they were these bros for Jesus that would go to schools and stuff, and they would break stuff in boards. And it was somehow this idea that somehow the strength of God is looking like these dudes that rip telephone books in half and smash boards with their heads.
What were those guys called? What was the name
Power
of that?
Team, I think.
Power Team, yeah.
I remember watching those videos in elementary school. I was like, wow, these guys are cool, but I didn't really care about the Jesus thing. I mean, I was in church and stuff. I was a Christian at the time or whatever, but it was just like, oh, that's pretty cool. You can do that. But that was about all I got out of it.
Yeah, it felt like they were like WWF back in the day, but for Jesus.
I've noticed that at a lot of the bigger churches, they're even, most of they have men's activities. So they might have a Super Bowl party and just men come, or another thing, the guy we talked about last week, he does is has these MMF flavored events, where it's all based around mixed martial arts and all of that, and kind of that toxic masculinity. They, have events for the single moms to teach the boys how to do manly things, like, I guess, changing the oil, changing the tires, which, why can't you teach that to women, to little girls also, and it's just a lot of that, just that toxic masculine, to be a man is to be really strong, have a big beard, a dark beard, not light beard or graying beard, but color it and make it real dark and
like JD,
like JD's,
yes,
and
yes.
So everyone needs to look more like JD, and
oh yeah, you gotta have all the accoutrement. I probably have some. Hey, let me see what I have here. If I can do this without ripping my headphones out. And also,
yeah, but an alpha man would rip his
even
headphones
though
out.
You gotta be really strong and able to use your hands, you also have to have weapons, right?
Yes.
This is my shiguatao. This is a purely accoutrement for my house. But yeah, it's just like, because in that video of the whatever MDK project, whatever nonsense, it's like, it's just all like the military stuff. It's them like walking around with guns, pretending like they're clearing rooms and stuff. It's like a power fantasy. But I don't think any of that stuff is inherently bad on its own. I think the issue is that you're trying to use it to cover up the fact that you're a broken person. I think it's fine to run ultra marathons or test your strength or, play like Rough House and bodybuild and whatever. I don't think any of that's bad in and of itself. But if you're using it to use my dad's words, bypass this other stuff in your life, or to use it as a way to lord over other people like children or your wife or females or whatever it is, then that's where it gets bad. But I think it's fine. If you want to have an MMA night, I worry about CTE, I guess, but I played football, so I can't talk too much. But yeah, whoever wants to join, why do we have to make it a men's thing? But it goes back to, we have to keep the gender separate, because it's a divide and conquer thing where it's easier to maintain control.
Yeah. So I think that, it relates back to this NRA narrative, where the NRA kind of pushed this narrative at one time. And the question goes, well, Carl, I know you're against violence, but what if someone broke into your house and raped your wife? What would you do then? So, well, I'm not violent, but my dog is. First of all, I do have a gun. I just don't think, that situation, that's never going to happen. I don't even know anybody personally that's ever had someone break into their house. Maybe I lived in the wrong neighborhoods, but it's never going to happen. But then the guys generally, as an average, have about 2 gun safes full of guns. And when ammunition got hard to get, they stocked up on ammunition. They have enough to fight a war, and so you're just playing on men's fears too. If someone's going to attack you, you're going to be sorry you didn't defend your family, and so we're going to make you suffer now. We're going to pretend like we're the military or something and bury you in dirt and make you crawl in the mud and humiliate you and break you down. And it just seems kind of ridiculous to me. But people are paying 18 grand, putting themselves in debt to do that. And my thing was, what about when you do that and go through that experience and you felt like, man, that was a success, I made it. And then you go home and tell your wife about that. Things are going to be different from now on, and she's just going to give you the side eye and go back to doing all the work that you didn't do while you were gone doing this. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it.
No, it does. It seems like it comes back to control, where it's like dudes controlling other dudes, so then those dudes can then control their families. It's just like it's a really bad pyramid scheme, for for people that don't want to deal with their own vulnerabilities and their own trauma. Because you were saying like breaking, they will say like, we'll break you down to your like core self so then you can know who you are and all this other things. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't therapy, bud.
Right.
This is kind of group think and a bunch of dudes just slapping their chests in the dark, doing bro stuff. But I do not think any of this. I mean, there's certain moments people can have that there is a benefit to being a part of a what is the word? Being a part of a process and being a part of community and showing up with that. But these things are, I really just think, they're moneymakers. Because you'd mentioned the grifter part as well too.
Yeah.
These things make a ton of money, and I think it leaves men more isolated than before.
Yeah.
Under the guise of no, we're your family, we're your community, this is how you find this out, but it's just all about posturing.
Yeah. I think to that point, the gun thing is also, of course, the NRA thing is also a big plot to get more gun sales so we can make some more money. But also, there's this program or whatever it keeps talking about how, what is it? Blood is thicker than water or whatever. I don't know. We're closer than your family, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's nonsense. I don't know. This stuff is frustrating, but it is all like kind of, to go back to what we talked about last time, it's all kind of cult tactics. Break you down, get you mentally stressed, deprive you of food, excess exhaustion, these kind of things. These are all classic indoctrination techniques.
Yeah. Mind control. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less.
I said maybe there was a time in history where the alpha male was the most important. I mean, if you're living out in the wilderness and those kind of things, but it's still promoting root brain kind of reactions to things. Can I respond and protect my family? And I think, maybe if we look back at history a little bit, the men that changed the world were pacifists and not like this. They were the nerds, in most cases, I don't remember an alpha male in that sense in leadership. We're kind of trying to go back to that. We have been in the last century or so trying to go back to that. So you get these big men figures that don't have exemplary lives, but are bullies, and mean. And that's where we get people like Donald Trump, even though he would never go on one of these retreats. He's not physically there, but he is verbally that way.
Or even during it was like Pete Hegseth's Secretary of Defense hearing. Like one of the guys, it was of course a Republican, asked him how many push-ups he can do. Like, are we even serious anymore? Like, is this even serious? It's who the hell cares about this? But so much of this I feel like it's anti-intellectual and it's like anti-emotions as well. And it's just, I feel like it's just all projection, which comes back to your idea of, I think there's grifters teaching other people to essentially just become fake.
Yeah. And then you have the Oklahoma senator from my home state, Mark, I can't remember his name, but he's an ex pro wrestler or MMA fighter, one. And, he met with the one of the union's members, the head of the union, and he threatened to fight him right there in the Senate chamber. You want to go right now? And it was just.
You talking about Mark Wayne?
No, it's I can't remember
Mark
his
Wayne
name.
Miller. Yeah, there was another dude that was challenging. Yeah, I don't even know what that accomplishes.
Yeah,
when people do that, it's just, I feel like it's just a show of dominance, but it's short-term dominance.
It's most of the time it's just showing off anyway. I've seen enough of that because I used to always do. I would always be the DD in university. I would designate a drive for everyone. I saw so many of those things where you would see the people. Like I remember one time I took my buddy, who's like a thin, tall guy, but then his brother, who's a Marine, and needed to probably see a psychiatrist, and then his friend, who was another like pretty big guy, and guys would come up to us and just start trying to pick fights. Like we walked past this fraternity, and these guys are like, "You damaged our car," blah blah blah. We're like, "No, we're just walking by. Like, you guys just go back inside, please." 15 guys come out. They're all like, "We'll mess you up. We'll mess you up." It's like, dude, it's like 15 people against 4. And I was like, you don't want to do this right now. You guys just don't want this. Just go inside. We'll go home. It's going to be fine. They're like, they just keep going. And my friend's friend picks up a brick, and the other one pulls out a knife, and they're like, okay, we can do this. And then they're like, all right, guys, I think it's time to go inside. It's just like, just talking for no reason. And we weren't, it drives me nuts. Like, it's so much of projection. Just like, I have to act tough because I'm so scared and insecure of what I am. Like, I've never, I feel like maybe in junior high school, but since then I've never felt that like, I gotta be really boisterous to, I'm just like, I just never have had that feeling. But I think a lot of people do, especially in America right now, it seems like.
Yeah, I've noticed these guys, and it is Mark Wayne Nolan, by the way. You're right. The guys like this that I've known up close and personal, it's an exterior, and underneath is something probably hurting. I mean, that's what religions attract. It's what cults attract. It's what the KKK attracts, is people that are already hurting, that are lost in some way, needing, family and so on. But underneath, it doesn't seem like the alpha males that I've known are healthy, whole, not what I want to be, I guess. So
I think it also depends how you
totally
define
what a beta
alpha,
would say.
yeah.
Sorry, JD, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying, I just think it depends what alpha male means too, because I have a buddy who's really, like, he's one of my Cambodian friends. He's big dude, tattooed, like, looks like people. He was another one where I would go out with him and people would try to pick fights with him because they find that guy who looks tougher than them, probably looks cooler than them, has better style than them, and they would just like try to talk shit. And there was so many, like, but he's like the nicest guy. He's really chill. He's really, like, really respects women, and he's just like an all around really nice dude. So, like, in the, like, physical category, you might say he's an alpha male. He goes to the gym every day, eats really well, all that kind of stuff, trains, but he's not an asshole. So I think it depends on how we define this alpha male. I think it's just this loose internet term that people throw around, and I don't really know if there's a serious meaning. I get what you mean by it, and I think that, of course, that's dangerous. But, like, when a lot of people use it, I don't know if they know what that means. But I don't know. I'm flustered.
More definition.
Sorry, my Taiwanese class is still rattling around my brain. I can't talk today.
My understanding from looking at a lot of definitions of that is that it always has the word aggressive in it, controlling, aggressive, and so on. I mean, you can be strong, you can be athletic, you can have those kind of abilities, and like you pointed out, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's when I have to be strong to control. I have to be, I have to get this secret thing so it'll make me better than the other men and better than the women, so I can control all of that in my life. And somehow, if I get the right juice, if I get the right medicine, if I take the right steroids, then I can be that thing, that people listen to and don't question. And but it's aggressive. It has aggressive in the definition most times.
I think folks that would declare themselves alpha are kind of always on the offense when they're perceiving the world around them. Everything is an opportunity to conquer or an opportunity to get my little bitch feelings hurt over something and then have to lash out at it. but it constantly just feels aggressive, like it's just always moving in a certain direction. There's no contemplation, there's no deeper thought to what's happening, there's no idea about what's the larger scale. I think within the alpha also, they're of this mentality that I know, like I
Mhm.
know the stuff, you don't, so you need to
Delusion.
follow me and this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Whatever the I know is, it's probably a moving target most of the time anyways.
Yeah.
uh, But it reminds me
Well,
too of the church, of like complementarianism versus egalitarianism, to where men run the church. Men can only do these things, and women are meant to just do these things in certain
yeah.
denominations. How they break
Yeah.
that down.
I guess I spent the whole first half of my life experiencing that, and not in a way like alpha male, like beards and all that, but just what you're saying, that those guys that assumed they were supposed to be in control, assumed they knew more than everybody else, and that was who was leading the churches. They maybe the most uneducated person in the room, but they mansplain to women. They speak from they're taught to speak from authority, even though the congregation may be way wiser than they are. It's always that. So I don't know if it always has to be guys with thick beards and that do army type stuff and stock up on their guns and can defend their family. I think it's just that aggression, that assumption that they're supposed to be in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I think it's about control.
Yeah, it establishes instantly like an interpersonal hierarchy to a situation.
Yeah.
That you're already in, to where someone's already thinking they're on the top.
Yeah.
So when I posted about this the first time, someone said, "Well, my granddaughters call me Sigma male instead of, the alpha feels like part of their job is to run over what they consider beta males, whatever. Even though, beta males are probably the ones that have had the most advances in science and all those kind of things and things that moved us forward. But said they call us a Sigma male. So are you interested in that definition?
Do you have a definition?
I do.
Give it to us.
So first of all, it's internet slang. But there's lots of places you can look up where there's about 8 or 10 different male classifications. So this is an internet slang used to describe a man who is independent, self-reliant, and often solitary. It says not, yeah. So that's the definition. That sounds good to me. Independent, self-reliant, solitary. I like that.
Solitary can be. It depends to what degree you take it, but yeah, it can be. I enjoy solitude, but it can be bad for some people too.
Yeah, I think it's necessary
Certainly
to develop to be able to experience solitude. Not all the time, but I think to get to that point, when we were in a membership class, we couldn't at one church, the pastor that was leading the new orientation for new members admitted he couldn't sit still for 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and meditate or something, or do the Jesus thing, whatever it was, the Jesus prayer. And then we went to a quietness retreat where they had us be silent for 20 minutes at a time, 6 times in a row. So that was a lot of solitude, a lot of quiet, a lot of meditation. But so, solitude, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I think, like, to JD's point, I think sometimes when we hear solitude, others may hear like you need to go be some sort of like desert nomad that's like living out in the middle of nowhere, that kind of guy. But I think solitude is also just it's space. You create space to step away from everything else, either to calm yourself, for contemplation. I mean, I think solitude isn't simply just I'm alone and quiet. And also I think I love how you were saying that, Carl. It takes time to be able to even develop that, because everything's so loud, everything's so immediate now. The idea of sitting and being quiet is very, very difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially even with technology, because even when you're alone, you're not alone ever.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to push back on something you said earlier, Carl, too,
yeah,
because
sure.
you were associating like that, and maybe I'm wrong or anyone pushed back. But when like back in the day, back in the hunter days, that that like the alpha was particularly celebrated. Some of that was culture, but you needed hunters and gatherers. You needed. I mean, it was more than simply just like I need to go out and take my shirt off and murder things. Even though a lot of that was celebrated, because I think we were a lot less educated as a species at that time.
Mhm.
And but I'm just even curious if those old archetypes was that simply the alpha male back then? You know how we always like to have back in the day, back when America was great. We always harken back to these other times to say that, and I'm curious if it wasn't all just alpha males that were able to do that in the like internet definition of how we're going in this kind of binary choice
Mhm.
behind it, because I think that survival is more than simply just being a stereotypical alpha. I think that yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, and maybe, yeah, maybe I can't speak for women, but I'm assuming they might say, well, yeah, he wanted to go out in the snow and do do that work,
Hmm.
right? And I didn't have to, so I let him do that. And I think it kind of feeds the male ego the way we've
Hmm.
developed it to do that. But take a look at myself right now. I can't really shovel snow, and my wife can. And so does that make me less of a man because I had a stroke and I can't move like that anymore, have that strength in my one arm. So, um, yeah, and I mean, I guess I was going back a little bit further in our
Hmm.
history, when we lived in a cave and there were dangerous animals outside, and we're like these bush people that live in the bush and in the most populated bear areas in the world, and it's that type of strong man. That's
But
the other thing that's going on is the Stronger Men's Conference.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, JD.
uh, all I was gonna say is it's to say like it used to be this way is also like a bit anachronistic, because like what like that's because when people tell me that as like a history teacher, they'll be like, oh well, it was like used to be like this in the 1950s. I'm like, where are you talking about? Like in ROC China, or are you talking about in Japan? Are we talking about like, and then you go back to 10,000 years ago. Okay, are you talking about a single band of tribesmen in southwestern modern day Ghana or something? Like it's all different, and there were groups of people who were led by women, and there were groups of people who had less gender differences, and it's nonsensical. Not to mention that even in the modern parlance, when we get into this, it's all just semantics. It's like, well, we've done it even today, which I think it's good to do. It's good to have the discussions, but it's like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean when one person says alpha male versus when another person does, or when someone says sigma male, or whatever one of these words are, everyone has a different definition of them. So I think
Hmm.
it's important to kind of tease that out, and also just to sometimes to get away from using some of these words. And this is just my opinion. I don't even like to get into these words because it gets so semantical. I just like to call spades spades sometimes and be like, no, you're just being manipulative, or you're just an asshole, or you're being overly aggressive, like you guys pointed out. Like,
Hmm.
I think sometimes it's better. But point being is it's way more complicated, and this kind of harkens back to what we talked about last week with simple solutions. People also want simple explanations, which I
Hmm.
think is bad, because it's a dumber way to think about things.
Hmm.
I think part of the selling point is, well, this is what women want. They want you to be an alpha male.
Women, yeah, all women are exactly the same too. That's
Yeah,
another fun thing to reduce. Women are like this, because I can tell
right.
you for certain people, because people even do that when I talk about Taiwan versus the US. They're like, what are women like there? And I'm like, they're individuals. They're like, there's a huge difference. There are some women who want a rich guy. There are some people who want a guy who goes to the gym every day. There are some people who want a nerdy guy. Like, it's, I think it gets, I think it's too broad. Men are like this, women are like this. Like, I think it's ridiculous to talk about things like that, even though of course we have to, and that's how our brains work, right? Put things into categories. But I think it can get dangerous real quick because we just start saying, well, women think this way, women do this. What
Yeah.
Which women, when, where?
And it's also dangerous anytime you have men telling other men, this is how this is how you get women. This is how I have cracked the code. And I know how to do this. And if you do these things, and no, JD, you brought up an interesting point too. I'm curious about some of this, even going back to, I think people just needing this for identity nowadays, to where it's almost like I don't have to think. I know what I am now. Right. I was labeled this at my strongman's conference. I'm a strong man, damn it. It almost just kind of feels like one of those things that people somehow just need this as an identity piece, even though, like what we've even talked about, I don't even think they're fully sure what it means. Because this whole thing is, it's a bit amorphous, but I think but there are certain hallmarks that you generally, if someone's like an alpha, at least in our culture, that you were like, oh, okay, yeah, he's just probably going to be an asshole. And, a selfish asshole. That really kind of sounds like what it boils down to, because it really just, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
Like JD says, you can't speak for all women or whatever. But I think most women, if they were attracted to a man because of his physical strength and that kind of stuff, they certainly don't appreciate it as much in the marriage active every day. When we had the conference with all women speakers, every single one of them told us the same thing. And they were in kind of a category of been abused by church and had bad experiences in church and so on. But they said their number one thing they wanted from a man was for them to listen to their stories and not to mansplain to them, but just to listen. And that is a generalization, but it's generally coming up more and more and more as the alpha male doctrines are, spoken at the greater men's conference and things like that. Then women are saying, what we really want you to do is listen to us. Let us preach, hear our stories of how we suffered under your leadership, and listen to those instead of just reading leadership books and, going to men's conferences and things like that. Listen to our stories so that you'll get the other half of the story you haven't ever heard. Right.
I think that's definitely true. But I think that's also true for men. I think men use these kind of alpha male things as an escape from the fact that really what they want to do is sit down and have someone listen to the fact that they're hurting or they don't feel loved or whatever it is. I think that's true for everyone involved. Is we all just need to talk more and also listen more, not talk over each other. We need to have genuine dialogue. But I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. And that goes to the ideas that we're losing things like community instead of them, we're getting these faux communities, whether it's I won't use specifics, just social media in general, I think is a replacement for that, which creates these parasocial dynamics, or whether it's these alpha male conferences where you go and you hurt each other. And so you kind of feel this connection, but then there's no actual real connection and you don't talk to those people anymore after it's done. But it's a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound that we have in the society. And until we get to where we build real community and have these real tough conversations and make ourselves vulnerable, we're just going to continue recycling these different pseudo solutions.
No, that's an excellent point, JD, about this kind of being fake community, or a fake shared experience to some degree, because you're right. You have these wonderful, like, wow, life-changing experiences because I'm around all these people, but there's regular life that we go back to.
Yeah.
And so it just ends up being a feel-good moment, which is, I guess, a variance of what we do for church on Sunday mornings. It ends up just being a feel-good thing for us. But I will note this too, that I honestly feel, especially in the Christian circle of alpha males, they're the most like catty bitches that like exist. This was last year, and I don't know if it was Strongman's conference. It was one of these, but Mark Driscoll was speaking at it, and they had a dude that I think it was either a pole he was doing some acrobatics on,
Yeah,
or
he swallowed a sword and then climbed a pole.
yeah, and I remember them just being like, "Oh my gosh, he's acting like a stripper. This means this," and like Driscoll hops on stage like literally after the guy and starts just going on this. I, I mean, yeah, it's going on this bizarre rant, which kind of begs the question of like, Mark, why did that bother you so much?
Yeah.
But since when did you like watching a guy like swallow a sword made you go like, oh, that reminds me of a dick in my mouth? How does that work? Like, I don't understand that. Like, I've never thought of that of like, ooh. But again, but they do this, and then there was all this infighting and stuff that was going on, after this. But you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
but it's they're almost just so afraid of not being alpha.
Right.
It just feels like this thing, like I have to keep being alpha, and if I do this, then I'm not alpha, and I don't know. I feel like it's just a perpetual space they have to keep themselves in there. They have to keep pumping up and putting others down that could be seen as effeminate or different than us.
Yeah, and the
You're just
promo,
afraid of being accused.
yeah, in the promo it said, "We're going to make you suffer," but then he made the outstanding proclamation that when you shed blood together with people, it's going to be thicker than your family. So there's definitely a lot of cult like insinuations in that one statement.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to take you away from your family. You're going to be closer with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, like most religious things, those people are going to feel empty later when they don't really find it. I mean, it's not really what they were looking for.
Well, and also because once you stop paying money, those people aren't going to fucking talk to you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. That's true even when you leave a church.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect the pastor to visit you anymore at your house. He's not going to, because that relationship is based on a business agreement.
But at least they're being honest. They're like, hey, you're going to come here and we'll hurt you.
Yeah.
Where a church should say that, like, hey guys, come here, we'll hurt you.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, a bunch of dudes being like, we're gonna come and hurt you. And it's just like, yes, daddy. What is happening with all it? Just some of it ends up just getting weirdly like homoerotic, and then they kind of know it, because if anything seems otherwise, they all freak out. But I don't. But again, it's deep-seated issues not willing to be talked about. We'd rather just break shit than talk about our emotions or feelings or our failings, or our worries or fears, because it's way more cool to blow shit up.
Yeah.
That's what I think we should also admit, or at least I will personally admit, this is the thing with guns too, is when people are like super like guns are like bad and scary and like they're machines of destruction and death. And while that's true, they're also really, really fun. And blowing stuff up is really fun. And fire and burning things is really fun. And I think it's okay to admit that. But I think you can't let that be your whole personality, because it's a pretty boring personality.
Yeah.
That's
especially
my thing.
Based on fear. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's bypassing the actual work you need to do, like make a good group of friends that can be honest and talk with each other, and then every month or so just go shoot some stuff in the woods. I think that's fine, as long as you're following proper safety protocols. I'm hopefully going to do that when I go back to the US.